So I really enjoy collegiate a cappella, first because it's so much fun. And that's what got me started on the whole project. It's music that I love, it's popular music, it's current music, but more than just the music, it's the people involved. So one of the things I think that collegiate a cappella has going for it as a subject for study is the idea that you've got these students who are going through a period of life change, right? A rite of passage. We call it college. And they come in as children and they leave presumably as adults. And as anyone who's been to college, gone away to camp, or just spent time away from home, you realize that you want friends. We all want friends. I mean, when I left college and came to graduate school at the University of Michigan, the first thing I did was decided I need friends here. I don't know anybody in this city. I'll join an a cappella group. And there were plenty on campus. And so your friends, I think all of us probably would agree, shape who you are. And in a musical sense, these groups of friends shape the way you sing and shape what you believe to be good music and good singing. So I was really interested in the social dynamics as well as the musical dynamics and how those work together in the creation of music and fun. A cappella is important to American music history because it has a rather long lineage. If you look at the history of a cappella, it goes back before this country was even formed. There were singing groups at the universities that were formed before independence. There were singing groups at Yale, there were singing groups at Harvard, there were singing groups at Dartmouth. And although these groups didn't sing the sorts of songs that a cappella groups are singing today, they played similar roles on campus. They were ambassadors for their college, they sang at graduation, they sang at dances and proms, and they gave students things to do. A lot of people in the a cappella world may not realize that a cappella goes back much farther than the Whiffenpoofs, which are a men's group at Yale, and they're usually thought of as the first group. And they're probably the first group in a modern sense. They were formed in 1909. But the fact that American college students have been singing in these student-led groups for over 200 years figures pretty importantly considering the number of Americans who've been through college in that time. Okay, so we know that collegiate a cappella has this history going back to colonial times, but that there was this real boom in a cappella groups that took place in the 1980s and 1990s. And there's a couple of reasons, I think, for this. For one thing, the 20th century saw a big increase in music education in general. So you have high school students who are increasingly exposed to music in a school setting, which of course is where collegiate a cappella groups form. You also have competitions that form in the 1910s. I think it starts in Kansas in 1914. And then much closer to the 1980s and 90s, you have groups like Billy Joel's The Longest Time. You know, whoa, for the longest time. Right, really easy song to sing. You get Bobby McFerrin doing Don't Worry, Be Happy. And these songs are big hits, and they're inspirational. So you have students who are involved in music in high school because there's music classes, there's choirs, there are bands, and they like this, they come to college, they want to continue doing music, and here is this model of music that doesn't require equipment, doesn't require money, just requires people and a place to sing. And you can do it on a street corner, like they did in doo-wop in the 50s and 60s, or you can do it in a classroom, which is more likely what happens now. You know, it's happening in music classrooms all over the country. A lot of professors don't even realize that the classroom they teach in is a rehearsal room later that night. So I think the 80s and 90s are really the boom because you have these musical models. You also get beatboxing that comes about with hip-hop, which feeds right into vocal percussion so that somebody's doing the drum sounds with their voice. And then you get encounters between groups. So one group is formed at one school, they travel to sing at another school. Somebody at that other school is inspired and starts a group of their own. And so it grows. And I think that the excitement kind of feeds into all of this. So in my research for the book, what I found was encounter is the key word when describing how new a cappella groups are formed. Encounters between groups and between people, even between people and music. So high school students who hear some college a cappella through a recording and decide, I want to do that. And they go to school and they hang up some posters and some paper in the dorm with a sign-up sheet, and they audition people and they start a group. More often, what happens at groups where there is an a cappella scene already established is you get a lot of people audition for a group, and only a couple of them are going to make it, because these groups are usually 16 people at most as their members. So you have some very talented singers who are very excited about singing, who don't get in, and decide, darn it, if I can't be in that group, I'm going to start my own. And there are a lot of groups across the country who are formed that way. The Dixon Janes at the University of Michigan were formed by someone who didn't get into Amazing Blue at the University of Michigan. And it starts off as this sort of upstart group, a ragtag bunch of singers, and they are today a powerful force on the University of Michigan campus. They've won all kinds of awards. Their recordings have been on some of the best of college a cappella compilation CDs that come out every year. So they're movers and shakers in the a cappella world, just as Amazing Blue is. In other cases, you get groups that come visiting a campus and inspire the singers on the campus that they visited. So I read, for example, in a thesis, an undergraduate thesis at Kalamazoo College, about a singer who was inspired by a group at Western Michigan University, also in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And so he got some friends together, and they formed the Aqua Pelicans. Of course, the Aqua Pelicans didn't last that long. By the time I got to Kalamazoo College on the faculty, only a couple of professors remembered, and none of the students did. But this goes to show you that some groups last a while, and some groups don't. But there are now 3 new a cappella groups on the Kalamazoo College campus that started because they were aware of groups at the University of Michigan, at various colleges in Chicago, and in the Northeast, and in California. So these sorts of encounters, whether it's between groups, between individuals, people who were friends in high school and then went off to different colleges, they come back for Thanksgiving, and one says to the other, you'll never guess what I did with my a cappella group. And the first one says, what's an a cappella group? That sounds fun. They go back and they start another group. So encounter really is the key to how new groups form. So students join collegiate a cappella groups for a variety of reasons. There are the musical reasons, that these are students who are very interested in music in high school and they want to continue those pursuits, and maybe they don't attend a school of music, and maybe they don't want to be in the official choir because they don't want to sing Beethoven and Bach and Mozart and Palestrina and the composers that the faculty-led choir are going to sing. Maybe they want to sing Billy Joel and the Black Eyed Peas and current contemporary pop music. So if that's a student's taste, collegiate a cappella is one place where they can satisfy that desire. Another reason could be the social benefits, such as having a group of friends, right, which is important. You're going to travel with these friends, you're going to get close to them, they're going to serve as your family. There's a reason why in my research, a lot of the people that I interviewed for the book described their a cappella group in terms of fraternities and sororities. Not to say that singers in a cappella groups are not also members of fraternities and sororities, but many of them aren't, and they still think of their group in the same way. Then there are other benefits, such as the experience of leading a team. Every group has leaders, and they may give them different titles. Some groups have presidents, and some groups have directors, and sometimes there's a social chair in addition to the chair of a particular concert planning. Every group usually has a director for the music and a director for the business end. All of these things help build a resume, for one thing. So if students are thinking ahead as far as applying for jobs and whatnot, this shows experience, but also builds time management skills, builds teamwork skills in any of the pursuits, whether it's arranging the music, whether it's running the rehearsal from the musical perspective or from the business end, working with clients, whether the client is the university or a private organization in town, to book the gig and present your group, negotiate payment, all those sorts of things. This is valuable experience. And some groups spend a lot of time in a recording studio, and recording an album is a rather complicated process, and you need to have a good vision at the beginning of what you want your group to sound like, and work with the staff at the studio and learn the technical tools and how you can use them to shape your group's sound. So all of these provide opportunities for learning, and it may be learning outside the classroom. It's learning nonetheless, but it's fun learning. In collegiate a cappella, technology is pervasive. It's everywhere. Right from the very beginning, in my research, the groups that were discussing which songs they wanted to sing the next semester, everybody was pulling them off of their iPods or off of their computers. So they're getting music in a digital form to begin with. And then when they arrange the music, when they decide who's going to sing which notes and they write it down in a score, most of the time this is done on a computer so that they can then email the files to each other and email it to the music director and have him or her make the copies so that everybody can read it in rehearsal. And then when they go to perform, we don't often think about it, but a microphone is technology. And microphones can only reproduce a certain range of frequencies, which is a little bit smaller than the range we can actually sing. And then the speakers that the sound is coming out of is technology. And those can only reproduce a certain range of frequencies. Where technology really comes into play, however, is in the recording studio. And there are groups who go into the recording studio and they want to capture the sound and the feeling of a live performance. And they may set up 1 or 2 microphones and have everybody sing into those microphones at the same time. And that's basically it. They don't fix any mistakes. It is what it is. But there are also a lot of groups who want to use the tools of the recording studio and the technology that a recording studio has to make them sound as good as possible, or to make their version of a song sound as close to the original recording as possible. And most of those original recordings have used plenty of technology to make them sound good. They use technology, computers, to make sure that the voices are in tune. On the original, well, they can do the same thing for the a cappella groups. This, of course, raises some issues. There are those who don't believe that a cappella should use so much technology in order to alter the sound, that there's some purity in the human voice. And there are those who worry that the more computer technology you use to alter the sound of the human voice, the less you're actually hearing a human voice. And the more the resulting product is really the product of a computer and a recording engineer, and less the product of the college a cappella singers. And there are people on both sides of the issue. There are those who would say, use as much technology as you want. If that's what you want, if your goal is to sound as good as possible, and you think that using technology to make it sound different is good, why not do that? So there's a wide spectrum of views on it. But in general, technology really is everywhere in a cappella, whether we realize it or not. So a lot of people think of rehearsals as simply a time when a group of musicians decides what they're going to do when they go out and give a performance. And that's true of collegiate a cappella. But what rehearsals do in collegiate a cappella that go beyond that is that they are themselves a site of social performance. So the social benefits that one gets from being in an a cappella group are often felt most strongly in a rehearsal. And one example of this would be the Fallen Angels. This is a women's group at Harvard University that I had the pleasure of spending a year with, observing their rehearsals. And one of the things that they did that I saw nowhere else was they did what they called check-in. And this is at the beginning of a rehearsal where they don't start with the music, they start by sitting down and having everybody say something about what's going on in their life. So some people talk about what's happening in school, they have a test coming up, has anyone taken this class, can they give any advice for how to study? Some people will talk about their parents, some people talk about, in the Fallen Angels, talk about maybe a boy that they're dating. And so this builds social bonds, that they share their experience with each other, which helps them get through this rite of passage that we call college, helps them grow up and gain experience from their peers. And then when that's done, they feel like closer friends when they get up and they warm up their voices and they sing the musical portion of the rehearsal. So I think the Fallen Angels are a really good example with check-in of one way that the social experience of rehearsal and the social experience of a cappella helps to support the musical experience of a cappella. A lot of studies of music talk about how the social world and musical world really enforce each other, or how culture and music mutually affect each other. What the collegiate a cappella study gives us is a new context for these sorts of things, because a lot of studies of popular music focus on individuals and their music, individual musicians or individual bands, whereas a cappella is really about the group making music and how power dynamics within the group affect the way that members of the group think about music. A cappella also brings to us a study of amateur music. And although there are scholars who have studied amateur music, by and large what you get when you go to a bookstore in the music section are studies of professional musicians, whether they're rock stars or classical composers, sometimes conductors. You don't see a lot on amateurs, whereas collegiate a cappella by definition is an amateur music. So we get to see how people who don't do music for their job or all the time every day, how music plays a role in their lives. So I think the fact that this is studying groups of people, that it's studying amateur music, that it's studying music on a college campus, where a lot of music is made, but not a lot of music is studied. I mean, we study music in music courses and we teach music courses on college campus, but we don't often study the people making music on college campuses. So in those three ways, they provide new contexts for studying how the social world and the musical world interact with each other. Counterparts made some great music, and I learned a lot of musical know-how from the group. And it was my first experience in a recording studio, which was really useful, and I loved it. I went back for the 25-year anniversary. It happened to be the year that I was doing the field research for the book, so it was research as much as it was fun. But I have very fond memories of Counterparts. But I still absolutely keep in touch with members of Amazing Blue. They remain some of my best friends. Absolutely. And some of them still live in Ann Arbor. Some of them are scattered across the country. We talk on the phone. We talk on Facebook. I go to as many concerts as I can. I like to stay involved in the collegiate a cappella world. I'm still a judge for the ICCA, which is the International Championship of Collegiate a cappella. And they have shows in the Midwest every year. And when I can, I try to be a judge for that because I like to give back. And I like to know what groups are singing right now. And I like to, I'm a professor, I'm a teacher. I like to help where I can. And part of the fun of judging is not just that you get to make a decision about somebody else, but that you get to impart your perspective and your advice. And whether the groups take it or not is up to them, but I try to be as positive as I can and help them to be as good as they can be.